celebrates 3 NASA astronauts and a Russian cosmonaut are due to blast off in a Crew Dragon spacecraft called Endeavour. The capsule will be on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket that's expected to launch just after midnight Friday. The Crew 8 mission calls for them to spend almost 6 months at the International Space Station. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
We've all felt the impact of rising food prices. For families in poverty, they're facing malnutrition and even death. You can feed a family for a month with your $50 donation to Compassion International. Just text the word radio to 97646.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
At age 39, LeBron James is showing us he can still take over a game and dominate. With the Lakers down by 21 to the Clippers last night early in the fourth quarter, LeBron led a comeback that resulted in a highly important 4-point win for the Lakers. LeBron scored 19 of his 34 points in the fourth quarter, 15 of those points coming on 5 3-pointers. Last night's game was the 5th time this season LeBron has scored 30 or more after turning 39 on December 30th. Former USC quarterback Caleb Williams, projected to be the #1 pick in the NFL draft, said he would be excited to play for the Chicago Bears if the Bears select him. Williams shot down rumors that he didn't want to play for the Bears. The Bears have the #1 pick, but they are entertaining trade offers for the pick and their quarterback Justin Fields. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte with the KBLA Talk 1580 editorial. In a public opinion survey commissioned by KBLA Talk 1580 and conducted by Viteris, the black voters surveyed were highly enthusiastic about the March 2024 primary. The race for Los Angeles District Attorney is being hotly contested. Incumbent DA George Gascon's efforts to implement progressive criminal justice reforms have generated pushback from within his own office, the broader law enforcement community, and some in the general public. He was the subject of at least 2 failed attempts to qualify recalls. The concerns about crime are reflected in the polling results of black voters. Nearly 1 in 4 have been victims of violent crime or have someone close to them who has been a victim. 1 in 5 black voters have personally been victims of property crime in the last 2 years. A majority of respondents feel less safe than they did a year or 2 ago, but they reject the notion that criminal justice reform has gone too far. This year, black voters will be looking for candidates who speak to the complexity of the issues as opposed to a one-size-fits-all approach. Nearly half of black voters have an unfavorable view of DA Gascon, but his challengers are largely unknown. Nearly half of the black voters are also undecided, which means there's a clear opportunity for candidates to connect with black voters. Our poll makes 3 things abundantly clear. Black voters matter. Black voters are closely following this race, and the candidates for DA have a lot of work to do. KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to the mobilization and use of the franchise to empower our audience to identify and pursue their interests in advancing equity, inclusive representation, and multiracial solidarity. For KBLA Talk 1580, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte. We welcome your feedback.
Live from historic Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get updates on X That's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit thetavissmileyshow.com. That's thetavissmileyshow.com, or wherever you get your podcast, and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast version of this live program at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today. Before we wrap another Black History Month, we reprise two very special conversations we were blessed to have this month. In our second hour, we will speak with the man, the first black man to lead the Sierra Club, the nation's largest and most effective grassroots environmental movement, Ben Jealous. Ben Jealous also made history as the youngest president and CEO of the venerable civil rights organization, the NAACP. Ben Jealous joins us today in hour two. In our third hour, two more conversations with history-making black folk. Up first, renowned photographer Misan Harriman, the first black man to shoot a cover for British Vogue, joins us to talk about art, activism, and the story behind his Oscar-nominated short film, The After, a powerful movie about loneliness, grief, and, yes, healing. On the B side of our three, Crystal and Dedrick Polite, the powerhouse African-American husband and wife team behind the A&E Hulu house-flipping television series, there's a mouthful, 50-50. So Crystal and Dedrick Polite join us on the B side of hour three. But I ain't done yet. In this first hour, two more conversations on the B side of this hour. UT Austin sociologist Michael Sierra Arevalo on his new book, The Danger Imperative, Violence, Death, and the Soul of Policing. What a fascinating, interesting term, the soul of policing. We will interrogate that and more, to be sure, on the backside of this hour. But we commence today's show in dialogue with Cherokee Nation Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. about why Black History Month is the appropriate time for Cherokee Nation to expand its executive order on equality for the freedmen being the former black slaves of the Cherokee. I am pleased to welcome Cherokee Nation Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. to this program. Chief Hoskin, how are you today, sir?
Tavis, I am doing wonderful. Thanks for having me on.
It's my great delight to have you on. Thank you for the time. Glad we got these 30 minutes to sort of walk through this. It is the last day of Black History Month. Around here, of course, we celebrate Black history every day, but I was taken by your comments earlier in this month. You chose Black History Month to make the announcement that you were expanding this measure. So first of all, tell me about the measure, and then we'll talk about the freedmen, these black slaves of the Cherokee Nation. First, your equality measure.
Sure. So this builds on an executive order that I issued in November of 2020. And so taken together, the original executive order and the more recent amendment, what it does is it says we've got to not only look at the letter of the law on freedom and equality, we've got to lean into it and embrace the spirit. We have to take real steps, and some of those real steps are, let's go into communities where freedmen citizens or Cherokee citizens of freedmen descent are disproportionately living. Let's make sure we're bringing information on programs and services into those communities, attending community functions that we're talking about parts of the Cherokee Nation, North Tulsa being one of those areas, and many people are familiar with the Tulsa Race Massacre, Black Wall Street. I'm talking about those areas where we historically have underinvested, and you can't fix that unless you go into the communities and start listening and learning. So that's one thing it does. Here, I think, is the more important substantive thing it does. I've been concerned since freedmen have been fully embraced in terms of legal equality. I've been concerned that there are barriers to access to these programs and services. So we're going to study, are Cherokee citizens of freedmen descent disproportionately not getting college scholarships? Are they not accessing health services? Are they not getting opportunities for housing assistance? Are they not getting opportunities to get on-the-job training, job training? There's a range of services we provide at the Cherokee Nation. We're really a government that believes in taking care of people. That's still something we believe in. Mm-hmm. I'm concerned, though, that because of centuries, really generations, is more apt of denying the civil rights of freedmen, that there's just barriers in place. We got to study those, and when we find them, we got to fix them.
You've heard Chief Hoskins say already on more than one occasion, make reference to the Cherokee citizens of freedmen descent. Cherokee citizens of freedmen descent. So I know you're asking yourself, who are these freedmen? Who are these black slaves of Cherokee Nation in days past, and some of you might even be surprised to know that this even exists. That there was a relationship between black folk and the Cherokee Nation, that even Native Americans owned slaves. Here we are on the last day of Black History Month, still empowering you with a storyline that you may not be familiar with. We'll do more of that when we come forward with Cherokee Nation Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. on Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good.
Yeah, man.
Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Do you support public education? More than 38,000 educators at United Teachers Los Angeles do too. Together, we have fought for a better public education for our students and communities, and having you on our side has been essential in our fight for better public schools. Together, we will continue to work for public schools with green spaces, more mental health staff, smaller class sizes at every grade level, and a higher investment in the Black Student Achievement Plan. We are UTLA, and you make us stronger.
Hey, what are you doing up on the step stool?
About to clean these light fixtures. The whole family's coming over, and if there's even a speck of dust in the house, my abuela will find it.
Here, I got a Swiffer duster to help with that.
A Swiffer what?
A Swiffer duster. It has this cool extendable handle that reaches 6 feet to get high and low, with fluffy dusters that easily trap and lock dust.
So, no more step stool?
No more step stool.
Easily trap and lock dust from hard-to-reach places with the Swiffer duster. Love it or your money back.
The thing no one tells you about periods is that your flow changes every day, and so should your tampon size. Tampax has 5 absorbencies to match your changing flow. If it hurts to remove, go down a size. If it leaks, go up a size. Only Tampax has a leak guard braid to help give you up to 100% leak and odor-free protection. All-day comfort and protection for under $5 a month. Based on average U.S. consumer usage at manufacturer's suggested price. However, pricing is at the sole discretion of the retailer. Excludes 8-count
It's game day at Jim's house, and the spread is impressive.
Mike's already done some damage with the hot wings, and now he's dropping back and going deep for another slice of pizza.
I sure hope he brought the Pepto.
Mike knows the Pepto-Bismol provides fast 5-symptom relief from unexpected stomach upsets. He's no rookie.
The way he's throwing back those nachos, he's the GOAT.
Be ready for game day with Pepto-Bismol.
When you have nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea.
Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Sounds different, huh? This is Tavis Smiley.
This is Tavis Smiley in conversation with Cherokee Nation Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr., talking about why Black History Month, even though we're on the last day of this month, is the right time to make good on the injustices done against tribal citizens of freedman descent. So it's time for a history lesson here, Chief Hoskin. Tell us about Cherokee Nation and its involvement, in fact, with the slave trade.
Well, glad to do it, and I want to preface it by saying this. There is an unfortunate movement in this country to whitewash history, deny the stories of marginalized people, and I want everyone to know that we are doing the exact opposite of the Cherokee Nation, and we're really stronger for it. So here's what we've been doing. After the executive order in 2020, we launched a really powerful initiative, which was the Freedmen Art and History project. We got Cherokee citizens of freedmen descent to be on a committee to say, how can we better understand your experience? How can you explore your experience it resulted in a really powerful exhibit in our own history museum so that we as Cherokees could confront this difficult history. So let's dig into that difficult history. For about a century before 1863, Cherokee Nation enslaved black people under our own laws. That happened in the Cherokee Nation, and it's something that we have to talk about. Cherokee Nation is now in what is northeast Oklahoma. Our original homelands was in the southeastern part of the United States, in places like Georgia, parts of Tennessee, in that part of the country. And, of course, we know what was going on in the 19th century in that part of the country. Slavery was unfortunately alive and well. So we passed laws to enslave other human beings. We did so, and as time went by, that became, of course, building our own economy on the backs of enslaved people. And so we were, of course, under our own era of oppression by the United States, suppression and dispossession, and there's an entire history that people need to know about our forced removal, known as the Trail of Tears. Who walked with us on the Trail of Tears? Well, our slaves, and they made that journey. We continued to enslave them after we came to our new homeland in 1839. As time goes by, the Civil War visits the Cherokee Nation. Cherokee Nation is split politically as a government in terms of North and South, and there's all sorts of interesting and sometimes complicated reasons for our allegiance that are kind of unique to the Cherokee Nation. But that was a divisive time period for not only the United States, that's putting it mildly, but the Cherokee Nation. 1863, and this coincides with the Emancipation Proclamation by Abraham Lincoln in that time frame, we issued an order freeing Cherokee slaves. We abolished slavery February 18th, 1863. At the conclusion of the Civil War, Tavis, we signed a treaty with the United States, and this is, if there was no other thing that I mentioned in terms of the historical context, it's this moment. We signed a treaty with the United States in 1866. It's our last treaty with the United States. It's still the law of the land. And what it said was, we're not going to enslave people anymore, and we're going to give freedmen, the new freed slaves, and their descendants all the rights of native Cherokees. Now, that's a quote from that treaty that we signed. Now, in my line of work as a chief of an Indian nation, treaties mean something. We spend our lives trying to get the United States to make good on treaties, whether it's providing for the health and welfare of native peoples, whether it's providing for hunting and fishing rights, territorial rights, all sorts of rights. We have to look at those treaties and understand that it's a collection of rights and obligations. So, Tavis, here's what happened next. This was a good part of Cherokee history. Cherokee citizens of freedmen descent were in the civic life of the Cherokee Nation right after 1866. They served in political office. But as time went by and the Cherokee Nation was again suppressed by the United States and our governmental controls really nearly demolished most of the 20th century, freedmen were really excluded from a lot of Cherokee civic life. And since the 1970s, when we sort of reestablished our sovereignty under some new federal laws, we have, and this is what we have to confront, we have spent considerable resources and time denying that history that I just described, denying the civil rights to the point where we actually voted to deny freedmen any rights to be citizens, and that was in 2007. The freedmen descendants took us to court, as they should have. What we did in that context of that court case was we waived some sovereign immunity. We said whatever the federal judge decides, we're going to abide by. 2017, the federal judge says what everybody really knows, Tavis, which is that if you say that a people and their descendants have all the rights of native Cherokees, that's all the rights. That's not some of the rights. That's not some of the rights some of the time. That's not some of the rights if they have to go beg for them at the ballot box every few years. That's all of the rights forever. That's where we are in the Cherokee Nation. But it's not enough that we just say, what's the letter of the law say? We're really trying to make meaningful efforts at unification, and not unification to the point, though, where we just sort of say, let's just forget the past. We got to remember the past because that's an experience that is worth exploring so that we can understand where we came from. That's the nutshell, Tavis.
No, I love that nutshell. I didn't want to interrupt. You laid that thing out brilliantly and beautifully, and because it is Black History Month, I am not above hearing a lecture on Black history and our relationship or lack thereof with Native peoples in this country. But that history now leads me to ask a few questions, and I want to make the most of these 10 minutes I have left with you interrogating what you've just laid out so brilliantly and so transparently, Chief Hoskin. Let me start with this. This is a basic question. Y'all should have known better. Y'all should have known better. I correct people all the time. Including Barack Obama, who famously said this in his big speech at the Democratic Convention in Boston when John Kerry got the nomination. It was really Obama's coming out party. And everybody knew after that speech that night that this guy was going to have a major future. And he, of course, goes on to become the first elected black president of these United States. But in that speech that night, he talked about slavery being America's original sin. And I always say to people, I know what we mean when we say that. We are well-intentioned, but since we're in Black History Month, slavery was not America's original sin. America's original sin is what we did to the native people. That's the original sin. And then we come along behind that. I raise that because if we can be that magnanimous about what this country did to native people, then how could native people, given what happened to them, be so wrong as to enslave Africans, black people?
You know, that's the real question. People who have themselves been oppressed, like the Cherokee people and really every indigenous people on this continent, how could we have turned around and enslaved other human beings? I think as you explore the history, the motivations that people in the United States and the government had to codify slavery and use slavery as an economic tool surely informed what Cherokee people did then. We had Cherokees who operated plantations, and the labor that they chose was slave labor. And it's difficult to reconcile people doing that in the context of themselves being oppressed. And if I could ever unpack that fully and analyze it, I would write a book about it. Yeah. All I can say is that for so long we dealt with that by not talking about it. We dealt with that by in some ways pretending it never happened or just not wanting to acknowledge it. I think to get to a good answer to that question, an acceptable answer, we have to take the steps we're taking right now. Is we have to say we did it. Because we don't say we did it, we can't answer why we did it. So I'll get there someday, Tavis.
Yeah, this question here requires a lot more time, and I don't have a lot of time with you. Unfortunately, we'll do it again somewhere down the road. But give me as succinct an answer as you can to what you explained to us earlier when you suggested that even Cherokee Nation was split on the Civil War. I mean, there are two sides to this thing. How could the nation be split on the Civil War?
That's right. So part of it was the split that of course, we all understand that the country was split. I mean, some politicians in the country might have a difficult time saying that the Civil War is about slavery, but we know it was. And so there was a division within the Cherokee Nation over slaveholders and non-slaveholders. The added element of that, and I think perhaps predominant, was the Cherokee Nation was looking at a federal government that was really failing to live up to a previous treaty known as the Treaty of New Echota. Treaty of 1838, all sorts of promises broken. And so the Southern government came to the Cherokee Nation and said, look, you side with us, we'll live up to all of those provisions the United States said they would live up to, land, finances, etc., and then some. And so a section of the slaveholding sympathizers in the Cherokee government said, look, we can have our slaves and we can ensure that this treaty that's being broken by the United States is complied with. And so you had, as a result, not only a political split, but a military split. You had Cherokees killing each other. In fact, we had more deaths as a result of the Civil War than we had in the Trail of Tears. So that is sort of the succinct way of explaining it, that it was the traditional things we understand to be the United States split over slavery, but it was also the added element of the United States had denied us the treaty rights.
I'm in the midst of rereading. I go back to it every so many years. I'm in the midst of rereading Frantz Fanon's book, The Wretched of the Earth, that great black philosopher. And you think about that phraseology, the wretched of the earth, that includes black folk, it includes natives. We've all been treated and maltreated and regarded as the wretched of the earth. But I wonder if you can tell me very quickly what you know, broadly speaking, about those who remain, these Cherokee citizens of freedman descent. Give me a sort of profile of who these black and red people are, if I can put it that way.
Sure. So we have about 460,000 citizens in the Cherokee Nation, which makes us the largest tribe in the country. There's around 15,000 Cherokee citizens of freedman descent. And to understand that a little better, we have a base census known as the Dawes Rolls, D-A-W-E-S, that was established by the United States at the turn of the 20th century. At that time, there was a roll that said Cherokee by blood, and it also said freedmen. Everyone who was on that freedman roll was a slave that was freed or a descendant of the slave. And so now anyone who traces back to that turn of the 20th century roll is eligible for citizenship, and we now have about, as I say, 15,000. Mm-hmm. They are serving in all walks of life, culturally, civically. My Secretary of State is a brilliant lady named Shella Boland. She's a Cherokee citizen of freedman descent. Marilyn Vann, a great freedman advocate, serves on our Environmental Protection Commission. My advisor on freedman affairs is a lady named Melissa Payne. So they're involved in government, business, all walks of life, but there's about 15,000 of them right now.
I got about 4 minutes left here, and I want to make the most of these 4 minutes. Let me ask you a couple of political questions because you raised it earlier subtly about those who run for office who can't acknowledge that the Civil War was about slavery. We know who you're talking about. We ain't calling no names, Nikki Haley. Anyway, let me ask you two political questions. On balance, over the years, or certainly in late modernity, who has been better politically for Cherokee Nation? I'm just curious. Democrats and Republicans. I'm talking now about the White House. And tell me about the native vote in 2024.
Well, it's a mixed bag. I think the native vote was very powerful in the last election, particularly in places like Arizona, where the Navajo Nation was very organized. In Oklahoma, we're very organized in getting people registered. Oklahoma is a red state, as they say, in terms of the political persuasion, Republican. But we're a powerful voice in terms of public policy and political influence. So to be more responsive to your question, it's a mixed bag. The parties have taken turns failing Indian country over the years. Sometimes they do it at the same time, but often it's a coalition. So one of the strongest advocates for Indian country is a Republican named Tom Cole, a congressman from Oklahoma. He's as conservative as it gets and well suited for the Republican Party, but he's a champion for Indian country. I would say on the presidential level, we have enjoyed much more engagement with federal agencies under President Obama than his Republican predecessor. In other words, when the agencies want to talk about how do we improve policy in Indian country, they come ask us more than the predecessor did. They sit down with us more than there's meaningful dialogue. Certainly the resources have improved, but I have to say under the Biden's predecessor, we negotiated some pretty significant health care improvements. And so I don't need to be unresponsive to your question, but my response is truly on Native American issues, there really is a bipartisan spirit. I do like, though, what President Biden has done on engagement. Matching engagement with funding, you can't beat that. We need that.
Yeah. How do you process, and certainly the African-American community experiences this in certain spaces, when you have somebody like Tom Cole, not to call him out, but since you referenced him, who's pretty much wrong on everything else, but he's right on your issues?
Yeah, we work with people who, I'd say, up and down some issues I fundamentally disagree with. I spent time yesterday at the Oklahoma State Capitol where there's a super majority of very, very ideologically driven conservatives. And I think we have to understand as leaders of sovereign nations, just like the President of France, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, we have to come to the United States and find them where they are and try to focus in on our issues. Now, we're Americans. We care about things, and it motivates us. I think we have to sort of, I hate to say compartmentalize, but for the good of the Cherokee people, I have to compartmentalize when I go advocate for treaty rights, when I advocate for funding, and that's just part of the job.
Let me close with this. I got about 60 seconds to go. You mentioned earlier, as you were moving through a very deft explanation of some of the questions I've asked you, deft response, I should say. You mentioned the Tulsa Massacre. I was honored to have in this studio just weeks ago the oldest living survivor of the Tulsa Massacre, now 109 years old. Viola Ford Fletcher was in this studio. Since you mentioned it, I'm just curious, learning history. This is Black History Month. Maybe I can learn some more history here. Was there any connection between the Tulsa Massacre and Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma all those years ago?
Well, the real connection is that was the Cherokee Nation on paper, but the United States had suppressed our government. So at that time, we weren't a functioning government. Our land had been allotted, meaning divided up, and a lot of those parcels of land within Black Wall Street were Cherokee allotments that had been sold. And in some cases, though, Cherokee citizens were still on those allotments. And so there's a connection there. Unfortunately, we were suppressed. But today, we're in that community talking about how can we make it better? How can we invest?
I am glad to see Cherokee Nation doing what this government, the U.S. government, has not as yet decided to do. I was just in conversation this week with an author with a new book out about reparations called Radical Reparations, and they're just begging begging for Joe Biden to say reparations. Just put the word in play. So I'm delighted once again to see Cherokee Nation doing what this U.S. government has, as of this moment, has opted not to do. And so we thank you for that, trying to make history right. We are grateful to Cherokee Nation Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. For coming on this program today to answer these questions, and we're thankful for his work and witness and leadership in this regard. Chief Hoskin, good to have you on, sir. All the best to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for your time. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The wildfire in the Texas Panhandle is now the largest in the state's history. The Smokehouse Creek fire has burned over 1 million acres and is only 3% contained. Texas A&M Forest Service said the blaze has combined with another wildfire as well. It comes as one person has been killed as a result of the fires. A bill being debated in the Alabama Senate would require history courses taught in K-12 schools to be fact-based and inclusive. SB 35, sponsored by Democratic Senator African-American Roger Smitherman of Birmingham, is designed to counter legislation by Senate Republicans who argue against discussions of divisive concepts in schools that would make any group feel guilty about past oppressions of others. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
We've all felt the impact of rising food prices. For families in poverty, they're facing malnutrition and even death. You can feed a family for a month with your $50 donation to Compassion International. Just text the word radio to 97646.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
At age 39, LeBron James is showing us he can still take over a game and dominate. With the Lakers down by 21 to the Clippers last night early in the fourth quarter, LeBron led a comeback that resulted in a highly important 4-point win for the Lakers. LeBron scored 19 of his 34 points in the fourth quarter, 15 of those points coming on 5 3-pointers. Last night's game was the 5th time this season LeBron has scored 30 or more after turning 39 on December 30th. Former USC quarterback Caleb Williams, projected to be the #1 pick in the NFL draft, said he would be excited to play for the Chicago Bears if the Bears select him. Williams shot down rumors that he didn't want to play for the Bears. The Bears have the #1 pick, but they are entertaining trade offers for the pick and their quarterback Justin Fields. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. Climate justice, climate equity, climate resilience. By any other name, we demand environmental justice in 2024 and beyond. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
Drought, war, and rising food prices have doubled the number of families facing malnutrition. You can help. $50 provides a food kit to feed a family for a month. Just text the word radio to 97646.
Don't shave with that, son. You'll get razor bumps.
Nah, Pops. I'm good with Gillette's Skin Guard. How long you been growing that beard anyway? You know Mama hates it.
Yeah, had it since my last wet shave in 77. Got ingrown so bad, looked like I was growing a patch of new noses.
That's why I use the Gillette Skin Guard razor, face scrub, shave gel, and moisturize, so I don't have to worry about new razor bumps or shaving irritation.
Gillette Skin Guard, huh? Your mama's gonna love this one.
Thanks for calling Discover. This is Gabby.
Hey, Gabby. It's Jennifer Coolidge. Hi. I'm so glad I reached you at 2 a.m.
Oh, of course. Anyone with a Discover card can call and talk to a real person 24/7. Now, how can I help?
Yeah, I used my Discover card to buy these yellow pleather pajamas, and I'm just not sure I'm pulling them off.
24/7 U.S.-based customer service. It pays to Discover. Limitations apply. Learn more at discover.com/credit card.
My ride smells just right, just right, just right, just right.
Y'all gotta try that Febreze car.
Just right, just right, just right. Yeah. La 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 la. With up to 40 days of consistency, all over Febreze car clips right on your vent. You know my car's my happy place. Keep that smile on my face when it smells just right, just right, just right. Yeah. Breathe happy Febreze. La 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 la.
Ready to re-examine your assumptions and expand your inventory of ideas? More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm thrilled to have you hanging out with us today in this first hour of our program. As promised now, the conversation with UT Austin sociology professor Michael Sierra Arevalo. That's Arevalo. I'll get that right. Arevalo. Is that right, Michael? Arevalo?
That's right, Tavis. Thanks I appreciate that.
No, I want to get it right, man. I with a name like Tavis, I get called Travis so much I'm used to it now. As I say, just don't call me late for dinner. I've been called many, many things, but I want to get that last name right. But I'm pleased to have you on for a conversation about law enforcement's existential crisis, as he lays out quite brilliantly in his new text. It's called "The Danger Imperative: Violence, Death, and the Soul of Policing." So, first of all, good to have you on the program. Welcome, Michael. Thanks for your time.
No, thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
My delight. Let me just jump right in. I said this at the top of the show today. I said that I want to sort of interrogate you on the phrasing of this subtitle, "The Soul of Policing." Let's just start there. What is there a soul when it comes to policing?
Sure. I mean, I argue that there is a soul in the book,
right.
As you might imagine. But I want something to highlight for listeners is that when I say the soul, I'm not really saying it's something that policing should be or that it's uncontested. It's instead a reflection of what policing is. It's a description of the central motivating ethos. If you want to understand how and why policing happens the way that it does, I argue that you have to understand policing's preoccupation with violence, and that is what I say is the soul of policing today.
Mm-hmm. Why is policing, to use your phrase, preoccupied with violence? We're told that they are to protect and serve, but here you come arguing that they are preoccupied with violence. Why so?
They're preoccupied with violence because that's the way the institution is designed. From the day you walk into the academy until the day that you sign off on the radio and you head home with your retirement, every single day in the police department is one in which you are continually reminded that you may have to fight for your life at any moment. This is intentional. This is not an accident.
Why not be preoccupied with serving? Why are police perennially in fear?
So I think that there's an important distinction here. There are other values that exist within policing, service and justice and honor and courage, and I've seen all those things myself in the course of the 1,000 hours that I spent with police across 3 cities, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, and one in the Southwest. What I argue, though, is that while there are other important values within policing, when rubber meets road, what officers are going to privilege above all else is going to be their own survival. So it's not to say that those other values aren't there and that officers don't show courageous thought for citizens. But when you want to understand the day-to-day reality, when you want to understand the day-to-day uses of violence, which goes from shootings, but also the far more common grabbing people, pushing people, handcuffing people. Those behaviors are justified on the grounds of officer safety and ensuring officer survival.
When you think about it that way, and Lord knows I am not going to sit here and make a defense for police, although I do believe that most are decent people. There are always those bad apples, but they don't need me to defend them. But to your point about the fact that what matters most to them is their own survival, in a field that is as dangerous as policing is, as I think about it, I guess that doesn't really strike me as shocking that they'd be concerned about their own survival. I guess the question is how you balance concern about your own survival with service. So how do you balance survival with serving?
It's a great question, Tavis. I think that what I point to in the book is that this is not necessarily an irrational concern for police. There are more guns than people in the United States, and officers in this country are violently victimized, both in terms of assaults, shootings, and in terms of deaths, than in other industrialized nations like Germany or Wales or England, and all of that is true. What I try to point out in the danger imperative is that there are consequences for orienting policing in terms of its training and its policy and its culture, such that officers privilege their own survival over the safety and well-being of the public in the moment. So how you balance those things, I think, is a very, very sticky question, which is why I'm actually more interested, instead of changing policing, I'm more interested in shrinking policing's footprint and looking for other avenues to enhance public safety.
Now you sound like Black Lives Matter, shrinking police's input.
Well, I do believe that Black Lives Matter. I'm not sure what specific attitudes you're pointing to within that large and decentralized movement. But what I'm interested in is taking things off of policing's plate. I think that officers themselves should be the first ones to say, I don't know why I'm being sent to take this report on a burglary that's 8 hours cold. I don't know why I'm being sent to this argument between a mom and her teenager that doesn't want to go to school. There are other people that can address those kinds of concerns. And frankly, I think a lot of officers would prefer to have some of their time freed up.
You know, it's a powerful point. I couldn't agree more with you, and for that matter, with Black Lives Matter, when they suggested there's certain things that police just ought not to be doing. I haven't wrapped my brain yet on abolishing police in this country, because when somebody's breaking in my house, I do want to call somebody. So I'm not sure that I want to abolish them, but I do believe that BLM is right, and you are right, Michael, that there's certain things that police ought not be doing. And yet, even as I acknowledge and admit that, I'm not so sure that just because we reduce the things that police do, it changes their attitudes about the public they're supposed to serve. I'm not so sure that reducing their call sheet, so to speak, of things they have to respond to changes this mindset that they have, that it's us versus them, and ultimately it's about my own survival. I'm not sure that one leads to two. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And surprisingly enough, I completely agree with you. I have grown increasingly skeptical of the idea that we are going to train our way out of the problem of police culture and violence. I think that things like procedural justice and cultural sensitivity and de-escalation, I'm not saying don't do those things, but I do think that we have limited political capital, we have limited financial resources, and we have limited political will. And so knowing that these things are limited, I think a conversation ought to begin with an admission of what policing is, and policing is violence. I'm less and less convinced that we are going to change the fundamental nature of the institution, which is why I think that our time and energy and resources might be better spent investing in non-police solutions that coincidentally can enhance safety not only for the public, but also for the police.
I have no problem engaging in dialogue when it comes to police about training. I've had more conversations about police and training than I can count over the course of my career. And one of the reasons why I get annoyed by that conversation is it just wears thin for me. It's because we talk about training, but we don't talk about the other part, which is who we train. We talk about training, but not who we train. So when we come forward, I want to ask, Michael, whether or not the real issue here is who we allow to become police in this country. We can indict the training all day long, but if you're starting out training the wrong person, it reminds me of the late, great coach Bobby Knight. Bobby had his issues, of course, but when I was a student at Indiana University, Bobby Knight was the head coach of IU men's basketball. And one day I was in a conversation with Coach Knight, and I used the phrase, I don't know what we were talking about, but I used the phrase, practice makes perfect. He said, no, it doesn't. and in Bobby Knight style, just deadpanned with no love, no compassion. No, it doesn't, Tavis. Practice does not make perfect. And I was repeating this refrain I heard 1,000 times. So I just stood there froze to see what he was going to say. He says, Tavis, practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. If you practice something the wrong way for too long, you'll never get it right. So practice doesn't make perfect. You got to practice it the right way to make it perfect. It's an interesting analogy, I think, that we'll discuss when we come forward about training. You can train all day long, but if you're training the wrong way, you got a problem. And that's Michael's point earlier about training them where they have this mindset that my survival is above all else, most primary. But then there's the other question, the greater question of who are we training? We'll get to that when we come forward. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley. Tavis Smiley. Ranked number 45 on the Heavy 100 list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
City of Los Angeles tenants, get informed today about your eviction rights. Take immediate action if you receive an eviction notice from the court. You have 5 days to respond to an eviction notice or unlawful detainer. Don't self-evict. And you can't be evicted for non-payment of rent unless you owe more than the fair market rent for a unit your size. Learn more eviction information such as at-fault and no-fault evictions at housing.lacity.org. Be informed, be protected, be at home.
She's so smooth, so... I'm interrupting my own shower to remind you to treat your skin like the queen she is with Olay Hyaluronic Body Wash, packed with Olay's highest level of vitamin B3 complex. It's so moisturizing that it will give you visibly smoother, head-turning skin in just 14 days. People wondering, how'd she get so smooth? Olay Hyaluronic Body Wash. Also, try Olay Hyaluronic Body Lotion.
On your period, sudden gushes happen without warning. But now, you can say goodbye to stand-up gush fears. Thanks to Always Ultra Thins with rapid dry technology. It absorbs gushes 2 times faster than the leading store brand and gives you up to 100% leak-free protection. Hello, clean and comfortable with Always Fear No Gush.
Jim was at the laundromat when he heard his ear said Maraca, senor, but his nose said, hey, freshest scent ever. Following his nose, Jim found a man pouring Gain scent beads into the washer. The scent, the freshness. Jim blurted, sir, your scent Maracas smell amazing. You could call them scent maracas, but most noses call them Gain scent beads. Try Gain scent beads, way fresher than detergent alone.
Who do you trust to get at the truth? Tavis Smiley. That's who. The conversation continues right now.
He does indeed with Michael Sierra Aravello, who is author of the new book, The Danger Imperative, Violence, Death, and the Soul of Policing. In case you've just tuned in, we already unpacked and interrogated that phrase, the soul of policing. But Michael, I was saying a moment ago, and if I'm wrong, feel free to disabuse me of this notion. It's not just about the training; it's about who we train. I don't know where we are on that question, sir.
Sure. So I think if there's a couple of things to point out here. One is about race and gender. And so we do have evidence that, for example, a paper was published in Science a few years ago, and it found that black officers and Hispanic officers and female officers use force less often than male officers and then white officers, and that holds constant across all those groups, specifically when interacting with black civilians. What's important to point out, though, is that the effect size, meaning how important that difference is relatively small. It's not fundamentally changing patterns of policing. Mm-hmm. And so there is something to be said for diversifying a police force in terms of gender and in terms of race. But frankly, if you think that putting black people and Latino people and women in uniform is going to address the fundamental nature of policing as a violent institution, I got sand to sell you on the beach. And the late, great James Baldwin was the one who himself said, Negro policemen are feared more than whites, for they have more to prove and fewer ways to prove it. And I think that's a feeling that many in the black community can attest to, that sometimes your skin folk, they aren't your kinfolk. I don't think necessarily changing who's in the uniform is going to fundamentally shift things.
To your point, quoting the great James Baldwin, just reading a piece today in the New York Times. They got a wonderful piece about Baldwin and how one should get introduced to his work. I highly recommend it if you've not seen it. Great piece about Baldwin today, again, in the New York Times. But to your point, quoting Baldwin, what's your sense of how what we saw, for example, in Memphis with those black cops beating and killing Tyre Nichols? What does that do to this narrative about the danger imperative, violence, death, and the soul of policing where people of color, or for that matter, where white folk are concerned?
So I think that what you see with Tyre Nichols, beyond the horror of that particular police killing, is that this is about an institution. Earlier, you used the phrase bad apples, and I think what I argue in the danger imperative is that this is not a story of bad or immoral apples. This is a story of systems. This is a story of an institution working exactly as it's designed to work.
I receive
with very predictable outcomes. And so what's important to recognize, I argue, is that we are not so different in many cases from the officers that we see patrolling. The system, the institution is designed to take people, often young men, and to show them and prove to them that the job that they are undertaking is one of profound danger. And if they hope to go home at night, then they had better take this seriously, because if they don't, they're going to wind up in a casket. This is the system working as it was designed to work. And I think that what you saw in Memphis with those black officers proves that just because you change the race of the person wearing the uniform, it doesn't change the institutional imperative to provide for officer safety at all times and to justify all sorts of behavior under the auspices of officer safety.
Our many moments with Michael Sierra Arvello when we come forward. His new book is called The Danger Imperative, Violence, Death, and the Soul of Policing. You're listening to him right now, and I'm glad about it, on Tavis Smiley.
Seeking the truth. Speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminding you that we keep us safe. Pro Football Hall of Famer and urban peace pioneer Jim Brown believed in just that. So he founded the Amera I Can Foundation for Social Change in 1988, focusing on at-risk and high-risk youth in underserved schools and juvenile detention facilities, as well as adult incarceration and reentry initiatives. The core of the Amera I Can program is its 15-chapter life skills curriculum. Mastery of these skills allows individuals to meet their academic academic potential, conform their behavior to acceptable societal standards, and improve the quality of their lives by equipping them with what they need to confidently and successfully contribute to society. Today, the foundation is led by its president, Monique Brown, who has been actively involved in the organization for more than 25 years. The Amera I Can Foundation continues its work in memory of its founder, actor, philanthropist, and NFL legend Jim Brown. To get involved or make a donation, please visit AmeriICanCommunity.partners. That's AmeriICanCommunity.partners. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
My mom has taken up going to the park to practice yoga.
My dad's going to a club, but not a book club, a salsa club.
Finding new hobbies comes with age.
My mom has started getting lost and not knowing where she's going.
Becoming lost or disoriented doesn't. Confusion with time or place may be a sign of Alzheimer's. An early diagnosis can help improve the quality of life for your loved one. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Got about 3 minutes left in this conversation. 3 minutes left with Michael Sierra Arvello and his new book of The Danger Imperative, Violence, Death, and the Soul of Policing. In the text, he shows how policing's preoccupation with danger shapes police culture and violence in the United States. I think this is the exit question, or certainly one of them, Michael. You talked moments ago about, and I'm glad you corrected me. And you did it so smooth and so subtly that I didn't even feel the pain. Like my doctor's nurse.
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, like my doctor's nurse giving me my shot in my left arm. So smooth. But I used the phrase bad apples, and I will now correct myself going forward and never use that phrase again, because you said, no, Tavis, it's not really bad apples when it comes to bad policing in this country. It's a system, and the system is doing exactly what it is designed to do. So away with the phrase bad apples, and now I'll start talking about systems, quoting you, and that the system is doing exactly what it is designed to do. With that in mind, if the system is doing exactly what it was and is designed to do, how then do we ever change this preoccupation with violence that you also told us exists?
So for me, I think that there are certain structural realities that are going to be very difficult to shift, to change the preoccupation with violence that is at the soul of the institution of policing. I think one of the main things there is guns. Guns are an unavoidable reality in the United States. We have over 400 million guns in the U.S. That's a conservative number, and that's more guns than there are people. That's just a harsh reality of policing American streets. And so considering that the Second Amendment is a reality and the guns probably aren't going anywhere, I, again, don't think it's completely irrational for police to be concerned with their safety. I just don't think that police should be going to do as many things as they are. And so instead of focusing our energy on changing police culture and constraining that institution in the way that we've been trying through things like training and other measures, I think that we should invest in non-police interventions that can actually enhance safety for officers and the public.
You know, that I hear that answer, and it's plausible, but I'm not so sure how persuasive it is. Although you've done the research here, and I raise that because it leaves me feeling like bankrupt and sort of hollow. The Bible says that sounding brass and tinkling cymbal. It feels hollow for me, because when I hear you say that we can't change the system, we can't change the culture. So the answer is, basically, I'm putting it in Tavis phraseology. Your answer basically is to just keep us away from them. Just don't send them out. Don't send them out to do certain things. And that seems that it's just hard to swallow that is the answer, just to keep them away from us. Don't send them out to do certain things. It kind of reminds me of Joe Biden, who many people believe that his best chance of winning re-election is that the other guy gets convicted. Not that you can beat him at the polls, but you want the guy to get convicted, and his getting convicted gives you a better chance to win. I'll take a victory any way I can take it, but it just seems a little weird to me, Michael.
So let me clarify there. I'm not saying that we should certainly not arrest our way out of the problem by putting police in jail. If that's what we're suggesting here.
Yeah.
I think that what we do need to do is invest in interventions that, again, don't require police intervention.
Right.
To make things safer for everybody. And those examples are actually very concrete. We know from research that increasing lighting and improving lighting in high crime areas can reduce crime and violence. We know that greening lots and fixing facades can reduce violence and reduce crime. We even have evidence that suggests that if you plant trees and reduce the ambient temperature within cities, you can reduce violence that way because temperature is something strongly correlated with violence.
Nope, I received those things, and the book is chock full of examples just like that. So I wasn't pushing back on Michael's research. I was just saying it just feels sort of strange that we can't get them to be better people, that we can't get them to be better people. Of course, Dr. King once said, you can't legislate morality. I get that, but I take the suggestions that Michael Sierra Arvello is laying out in his new book. It's called The Danger Imperative, Violence, Death, and the Soul of Policing. Michael, congrats on the work. Thank you for doing this work that is often published in these leading journals, and thank you for this conversation, sir.
Thanks so much, Tavis. I appreciate your time.
My great delight to have you on. More of Tavis Smiley on this last day of Black History Month when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The wildfire in the Texas Panhandle is now the largest in the state's history. The Smokehouse Creek fire has burned over 1 million acres and is only 3% contained. Texas A&M Forest Service said the blaze has combined with another wildfire as well. It comes as one person has been killed as a result of the fires. A bill being debated in the Alabama Senate would require history courses taught in K-12 schools to be fact-based and inclusive. SB 35, sponsored by Democratic Senator African-American Roger Smitherman of Birmingham, is designed to counter legislation by Senate Republicans who argue against discussions of divisive concepts in schools that would make any group feel guilty about past oppressions of others. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
We've all felt the impact of rising food prices.